So the Atlantis one.
Yeah, the Rishad structure.
I've been fascinated by the concept of Atlantis. It seems like something happened that reset civilization, and there's very little evidence of advanced civilizations before that up until recently, up until the last couple of decades. They started uncovering things like Göbekli Tepe and all these other structures that are clearly from more than 12,000 years ago.
Is it possible that an advanced civilization existed on Earth over 10,000 years ago? Could it be that as a species, humanity has forgotten its past? Or as Graham Hancock so eloquently put it, are we a species with amnesia? According to the traditional theory of human evolution, this is impossible. The progression of man's transition is said to be this: bands of nomads that wandered the land and followed wild herds of animals, to farmers, merchants, and townsfolk, to city-dwelling, industrial-type society, finally to the global society of today. To those who accept this theory of evolution and progression at face value, humans today are at the peak of their technological and scientific understanding. Society has slowly but surely continued its upward trend from the cave-dwelling Neanderthal of the past to the iPhone-using Homo sapiens of today. While the traditional linear view of societal evolution is widely held, there is a growing number of scientists and people at large that are seeing more and more evidence emerge for a different human history. A history that has been forgotten. A history that has left clues through myth and legend so that one day, people would remember the accomplishments and heights of the power of their ancestors.
This unbelievably bizarre structure just so happens to match a dozen of the most significant similarities to Plato's description of the famed lost capital city of Atlantis. But perhaps the only thing stranger than these striking comparisons is the fact that the Rishad structure itself remains a genuine scientific mystery that continues to confound scientists to this day, as this one-of-a-kind geological feature is like no other place found anywhere else on Earth and has remained essentially hidden and largely unknown within the remote Western Sahara Desert of Mauritania, which only makes its distinctive nature that much more curious when you consider that so few people have still never seen or heard of it before, even including the most curious and inquisitive minds around.
In order to decode the sequence of enigmatic events that are set to unfold in the prophetic future, it is incumbent upon us to comprehend the magnitude and consequence of what occurred in the primordial past. The procession of history, like the orbit of the Earth, is going full circle back to the beginning, where it all began. Hence, we can know the end from the beginning. The final chapter of the story is foreshadowed in the first. Genesis is the cipher of Revelation. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Any attempt to crack the cryptogram of eschatology without employing the cipher of Genesis is an exercise in futility. Scripture foretells of a final world empire that will arise in the earth at the end of the age, symbolized in the motif of the fiery phoenix reborn from the ashes of its incinerated corpse. This last empire will be resurrected from the antediluvian ashes of the first empire, the empire of the gods. The angelic insurrection and subsequent genetic miscegenation that occurred in the earth preceding the flood of Noah will be repeated at the end of the age, before the world is destroyed again, but this time by fire. The acolytes of the mystery schools and high-level Luciferians worldwide, both in the so-called right-hand path of the mysteries, exemplified by Helena Blavatsky and her Theosophists, and those of the more sinister left-hand path, exemplified by Aleister Crowley and his Thelemites, are all laboring toward the same ultimate objective: to usher in a new golden age and resurrect the Atlantean empire that sank beneath the waves of the Great Flood. So let's begin by dispensing with the ludicrous propaganda that we have all been subjected to regarding our antediluvian antecedents. Contrary to popular conception, our prehistoric forebears were not Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble. We have been intentionally disinformed concerning the nature of the prehistoric world and the caliber of men that inhabited it. Western society is incessantly propagandized with the idea that in the infancy of our species, men were savage imbeciles without knowledge, without technology, and without civilization. Even most Christians, while rejecting the evolutionary model of Darwinism, nevertheless assume an evolutionary paradigm of history. It's merely taken for granted that we are the apex of our species, that our antecedents were vastly inferior to us in every way. That as you move backwards on the timeline of history, you descend from the intellectual superiority of modern men living in the 21st century to the barbarous stupidity of antediluvians living in the prehistoric past. However, this gradual retrograde of civilization that can be traced in the historical record comes to a grinding halt circa 3300 BC. This is that seminal period of time in which historians mark the beginning of civilization attributed to the Sumerians. But in reality, what the date 3300 BC designates is not the beginning, but the abrupt end of an advanced global empire that was liquidated from the face of the earth. The Western ideology concerning the upward progression of civilization, in which mankind has been gradually rediscovering the rudiments of science and technology over the centuries, does not correspond to the reckoning of ancient cultures, many of whom have managed to preserve, at least in part, a testimony of the technological wonders of the old world, the hybrid races that inhabited it, and the cataclysm that brought it to ruin. In a sense, modern man is suffering from a delusion of grandeur, in which he believes himself to be the discoverer of science and the inventor of technology. And yet, the truth is that many of the scientific advances of the 20th and 21st centuries are not new discoveries, but rather rediscoveries of the ancient knowledge that was lost in the flood. Whether we like to admit it or not, the Western mind, both secular and Christian, has been greatly influenced by a Darwinian paradigm of history, which has effectively disarmed us in the face of a crisis the likes of which humanity has never before seen. Ironically, this impending peril for mankind is predicated on the very antithesis of Darwin's theory. Charles Darwin managed to distill from nature the polar reverse of nature's condition. The Darwinist doctrine pertaining to the evolution of the human species assumes genetic ascendancy. According to the evolutionary model, the Homo sapien began his biological ascent as a primordial hominid, and over millions of years gradually mutated into a more sophisticated creature, until the blind volition of natural selection conceived you and me. This miraculous ascent from the knuckle-dragging ape to the moonwalking Homo sapien implies a tremendous increase of genetic information and complexity. The problem for evolutionary apologists, and frankly for all of us, is that our species has not been undergoing a process of genetic ascendancy, but rather of genetic entropy, which is to say genetic degeneration. The fact is, the human race has been devolving for thousands of years, and the shocking headline is that the process of degeneration is greatly accelerated in modern man. In order to acquire a more accurate prognosis of our degenerative condition, we need to compare ourselves to the original prototype of our species. Mankind was not designed to be a little higher than the animals, but a little lower than the angels. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. We were designed to be much more magnificent than what we have become. Our progenitor Adam was the prototypical man, the perfect human being. There was not a single aberration in his genetic code. And because his genetic architecture was impeccable, he very likely possessed astonishing capabilities, mental and otherwise, that would be considered superhuman today. He was certainly physically much more robust than we are, mentally more acute, and spiritually more attuned. And then came the fall. In the book of Romans, Paul writes that sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and that the wages of sin are death. Paul was not merely waxing poetically. He was describing the physics of the law of sin and death. When Adam sinned, the mechanism of death was activated, and the gears of entropy were set into motion. Mankind and the natural world of his dominion began to devolve. Consequently, as the blueprint of Adam's genome is copied from one generation to the next, it gradually loses information and accumulates deleterious, bad mutations. It degenerates. Modern man is now divorced from Adam, our original genetic blueprint, by hundreds of generations. And the corrosive gears of entropy, the law of sin and death, is manifesting in catastrophic ways. The human species is presently suffering from a crushing load of genetic mutations, precipitating a host of physical, psychological, and spiritual maladies. Quite contrary to what we've been led to believe in textbooks and in movies, in comparison to prehistoric man, modern man is pathetically inferior. Essentially, a genetic mutation is equivalent to a spelling error in a book, in this case, the codex of our DNA. One of the most renowned of these geneticists, a man by the name of Herman Muller, projected that just one deleterious mutation per person, per generation, would lead to an inevitable long-term genetic deterioration of the human race, ultimately resulting in what is called error catastrophe, which is a fancy term for extinction by genetic mutation. We now know that there are over 1,000 deleterious nucleotide mutations per person, per generation. And that is by many accounts a conservative estimate. What we are witnessing is the beginning stages of a species-wide genetic mutational meltdown that will lead to an inevitable crisis of apocalyptic proportions. This is not my opinion. This is the quiet consensus of many population geneticists worldwide. And unfortunately, the evidence is all too conclusive. There are a host of other warning signs manifesting in the aggregate of the human species. But like cancer, we have simply assimilated them into our lives as if their occurrence were perfectly normal. Instead of evacuating the building when the fire alarm goes off, we've just got used to the noise and carry on as if the building were not burning to the ground. The reason why we are so content to absorb these terrible afflictions into our subconscious without being utterly dismayed by their dire implications is because the crutch of technology has given us a false sense of confidence. We have a facade of fitness sustained by technological props, which have only been available to society within the last century. Before the pivotal advances in medical science during the 20th century, we had no way of buttressing our genetic weakness. And as a result, simple maladies were wiping out mass populations all over the world. The average life expectancy in the 19th century was 40 years old. Of course, the infant mortality rate was off the charts back then, and poor hygiene practices were contributing to the widespread proliferation of pathogens. But again, the underlying problem was and is genetic degeneration. Throughout the Bible, we are presented with a fascinating interplay between men and angels. But what exactly are angels? The word angel, malak in the Hebrew and angelos in the Greek, simply means messenger, an envoy, one who is sent. There's likely a multifarious array of different species among the hosts of heaven, but the angels that interact with human beings on the earth always have the appearance of men, at least in the scriptures. So much do they apparently resemble us, or rather, we resemble them, that the writer of Hebrews, while encouraging the church not to forget to entertain strangers, includes the curious addendum. For by doing so, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Quite contrary to Renaissance imagery, there are no female angels recorded in the scriptures. In fact, a feminine form of the Greek word angelos does not even exist. Except in the case of seraphim and cherubim, which are esoteric creatures subject to interpretation, angels are never depicted in the Bible with wings. We do, however, often find them in possession of technology, such as vehicles of conveyance and weapons of war, which infers scientific knowledge. They have a spoken and written language. In fact, they keep records. They have a sophisticated governmental hierarchy, including a military. They sing and compose music, which infers creativity and an artistic aptitude. It is also apparent that angels can eat and drink. They do so on several occasions in the scripture. Incidentally, we also see Jesus eating fish and bread after the resurrection. I don't believe that the angels and the resurrected Christ were eating and drinking for our amusement. It seems evident that the consumption of food is not unique to the earth. After all, the Israelites ate the bread of heaven in the wilderness. It was called manna. We know that some angels deliver messages, some engage in warfare, some execute the judgment of God, and some minister to men, but we are never explicitly told who or what exactly they are. The question seems to be left for us to extrapolate. So let's extrapolate. Angels have scientific knowledge. They utilize technology. They have a spoken and written language. They keep records. They have a governmental hierarchy. They compose music, and they indulge in food and drink. These are the hallmarks of society and culture. What we are dealing with is a highly advanced civilization that predates our own. Mankind is not the inventor, but the inheritor of civilization, the beneficiary of an extraterrestrial society, culture, and science. And of course, by extraterrestrial, I mean not of the earth, non-telluric. The truth is that human beings are not all that different from their angelic counterparts. That is, if by human beings, we mean Adam, our original genetic blueprint. The problem for us is that we have lost the ability to perceive the hyperdimensions in which they traffic. The scriptures insinuate that the world perceivable to fallen man is only the shadow of reality. A shadow casts a two-dimensional silhouette of a three-dimensional object. Essentially, it's a darkened and flattened reflection of a luminous, multi-dimensional reality. In other words, we see the world in shadows. I believe that Adam could perceive the dimensional totality of creation till his mind was darkened because of sin. The good news is that those who are redeemed in the cross can look forward to regaining in Christ what was lost in Adam. For now we see in a mirror dimly, a dark reflection, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I am known. And of course, Paul is alluding here to the resurrection. And as it relates to the resurrection, there is a term that unifies angels and men in extraordinary ways. B'nai ha Elohim, the sons of God. This term is always and only used in the Old Testament to denote the non-procreated children of God. Simply put, beings that were not conceived in a womb, such as angels and Adam. It is a designation of paternity, origin, and estate. During God's dialogue with Job, he asked Job, rhetorically, if he was there when the foundations of the earth were laid, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. These sons of God were witnesses to the creation of planet Earth and may pre-exist mankind by eons of time. The term carries over into the New Testament, where it maintains its Old Testament meaning but is now applicable to the sons of men, who through Christ can become the sons of God. But as many as received him, Jesus, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. John is not saying that those who believe in Jesus are already the sons of God, but rather are given power to become the sons of God. This power is the hope of the gospel. It's the resurrection. Jesus answered and said to them, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are counted worthy to attain that age and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, nor can they die anymore. For they are equal to the angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. Those of us who believe in Jesus are on a trajectory to become the sons of God, equal to the angels in respect to their immortal condition and hyperdimensional nature, which is essentially a reset of mankind to his original blueprint. When we think about angels, let's liberate our minds from the vapid imaginations imposed on them by Catholicism, and instead think in terms of an exceedingly advanced and unfathomably ancient extraterrestrial civilization, of which our terrestrial civilizations are but dark reflections, especially as we consider the insurrection of fallen angels in the pre-flood world. The Genesis 6 affair introduces us to a specific delegation among the hosts of heaven. In the Masoretic text, the translation of the Old Testament that most of you are familiar with, these beings are referred to by the nature of their estate, the sons of God. Likewise, the Septuagint, the Greek translation familiar to the early church, calls them the angels of God, which consequently invalidates the ridiculous Sethite nonsense, for those of you who are familiar with the sons of Seth theory. However, Hebrew tradition, as well as numerous extra-biblical sources, designate these beings with the Aramaic word irene, rendered in the Greek as egregori, and in the English as watchers. The word watcher denotes occupation rather than classification or kind. But there is some dispute as to what exactly the occupation of the watchers was. Some argue that these entities are called watchers because they were appointed to watch over the affairs of men. Others contend the watchers are synonymous with the seraphim, who guard or watch over the throne of God. What is incontestable is that whatever the occupation of these beings, they became enamored with the daughters of men and committed one of the most grievous sins recorded in the Scriptures, evidenced by the severity and swiftness of their judgment. They procreated an unsanctioned race of hybrid entities in the earth. When taken together, the primary biblical and extra-biblical accounts, sources pertaining to the watchers, the book of Genesis, the book of Enoch, the book of Giants, and the book of Jubilees, relate the following story. The story begins with a company of 200 watchers who are enamored with the daughters of men. Their forbidden desires are betrayed in a line of dialogue recorded in the book of Enoch. Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men and beget us children. Now, I'm going to suggest to you this evening that the insurrection of the watchers was catalyzed by one primary vice: envy. The watchers were envious of men. Specifically, there are three things they coveted. First, females. Men were given a special gift that was never granted to the sons of God, a female counterpart, a wife. The Watchers lusted after human women and envied men for their wives. Second, offspring. Because men had female counterparts, they could procreate. Procreation is a privilege not afforded the children of heaven. This is why abortion is such an abomination and promoted so vigorously by the enemies of mankind. They envy our ability to reproduce offspring. Third, dominion. Men were given dominion of planet Earth. This is perhaps the most important and most overlooked aspect of the fall of the Watchers, especially as it relates to the end of the age. The Watchers coveted man's dominion of the earth. So, burning with envy and lust, the Watchers bind themselves with an oath of mutual implications and willfully rebel against God. They abandon their heavenly abode and descend to the earth on the summit of Mount Hermon in the days of Jared. Understand that the descent of the Watchers does not merely imply a change of locality from heaven to earth, but a change of nature. They abandoned their heavenly bodies. This becomes clear when the appropriate hermeneutics are applied to a critical passage pertaining the Watchers in the book of Jude. And the angels who did not keep their proper domain but left their own abode, he has reserved an everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. The word abode in this verse is okaterion in the Greek, which is most commonly used to describe a bodily residence. Jude's choice of the word okaterion to designate that which the Watchers left in their heavenly domain cannot be coincidental, as it only appears in one other passage of the New Testament. For we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed with our habitation, which is from heaven. The word habitation here is okaterion. Paul is using the same word to describe the bodies the saints will gain at the advent of the resurrection that Jude uses to describe what the Watchers left or forfeited when they descended to the earth. The Watchers willingly chose to shed their transcendent bodies in heaven in order to assume on earth the material bodies that would facilitate what they intended to do. The Watchers take for themselves wives from among the daughters of men, and they copulate with them. The women give birth to a hybrid race of giants. And we tend to imagine that the giants born of the Watchers were all of the same kind because the Bible is vague when referring to them. But according to some apocryphal manuscripts, there are at least 3 different races of giants in the pre-flood world. The Greek translation of the book of Enoch records, and they, the women, bore to them, the Watchers, 3 races. First, the great giants. The giants brought forth, other translations read, slew, the Nephilim. And the Nephilim brought forth, or slew, the Eliod. And they existed increasing in power according to their greatness. The book of Jubilees concurs. And they begat sons, the Nephidim, and they were all unalike, and they devoured one another. And the giants slew the Nephil, and Nephil slew the Eliod, and the Eliod mankind, and one man another. So according to Hebrew tradition, there were divergent races, or successive races of giants in the earth before the flood that differed and prowess from one another. Watchers and their offspring had plenty of time to breed before they're annihilated. And the breeding was not limited to human females. After producing offspring with their wives, the Watchers select 200 specimens from every animal species for miscegenation. The animals give birth to sentient monsters. The Book of Giants, discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, although the manuscript is damaged and highly fragmented, the pieces that are left to us paint a lurid picture. 200 donkeys, 200 asses, 200 rams of the flock, 200 goats, 200 beasts of the field from every animal, from every bird, were selected for miscegenation. They begot giants and monsters. They begot, and behold, all the earth was corrupted. Not only were the Watchers procreating with the daughters of Adam, spawning races of giants, the genomes of all flesh were corrupted, filled with hybrid mutants. As if that were not enough to kindle the ire of the Maker, the Watchers teach their wives, their offspring, and mankind the forbidden secrets of heaven. The Watchers did not teach impractical New Age mysticism. They disclosed the secrets of what we call today science and technology, relating to the fields of astronomy, pharmacy, geology, metallurgy, masonry, mathematics, genetics, and physics, among others. But don't make the mistake of associating their technology with ours. This is not what the technologies of the Watchers look like. Most of our technologies are superfluous, designed for the convenience and amusement of impotent human minds. The high technology of a vastly superior angelic civilization would not resemble the tools and toys that we have contrived for profit and play. So don't go looking for laptops and Lamborghinis in the antediluvian age. The technology of the Watchers is so foreign to the mind of man that we would scarcely be able to recognize it even if the waters of the flood had not washed it away. So complete was the destruction of the old world that the only evidence left standing to testify are the megalithic edifices that were constructed with solid stone. Like the bleached bones of a corpse long dead, the ruinous remains of megaliths worldwide stand in memoriam of the Watchers, their fallen empire, and the judgment of God. Encoded within the megaliths is knowledge lost to mankind. The quarrying, transporting, shaping, lifting, and placing of these mammoth blocks of hard stone, flawlessly fitted together, implies a level of technological capability that would not be seen in the earth again until the advent of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. Without considering any other evidence, the megaliths alone prove the existence of advanced scientific knowledge in the prehistoric past. Mankind is corrupted with the knowledge of the Watchers and excels in war, idolatry, murder, sorcery, and licentiousness. The Watchers divide the dominion of the earth amongst themselves and appoint their hybrid sons as rulers over their respective realms. This is the Atlantean paradigm, what I call the empire of the gods. The objective of the Watchers wasn't just to corrupt the earth, but to rule the earth from behind the thrones of their hybrid sons. Planet Earth was given to Adam and his offspring. The incursion of the Watchers and their procreation of hybrid offspring with the daughters of Adam, usurpation of mankind, and his divine mandate of dominion. To make themselves the gods of a new creation, a creation that would worship them rather than the King of Heaven. Cataclysmic flood that lays waste to the empire of the gods, cleansing the earth of their abominable offspring and their mutant genes. But what most people don't realize is just how much time elapsed from the descent of the Watchers to the cataclysm of the flood. In Genesis 5, we are provided with a genealogy of the antediluvian patriarchs, beginning with Adam and ending with the sons of Noah. According to the Septuagint, from Adam to the flood, which occurred in the year Methuselah died, some 2,256 years transpired. The book of Enoch tells us that the Watchers descended in the days of Jared. From the birth of Jared to the flood of Noah, folks, that's well over 1,000 years. 1,000 years of Watchers begetting giants, and giants begetting monsters, and monsters begetting more monsters. It's also 1,000 years for the proliferation of the secret scientific knowledge that the Watchers disclosed. Great cities were constructed. This was the true golden age of yore. The gods were dwelling among men, mingling their DNA with the genomes of terrestrial life, teaching forbidden knowledge, and hijacking for themselves the veneration that pays to their dedication across the empire, constructed with advanced technology by the hands of their hybrid offspring. These temples did not memorialize distant mythological deities. Now, I am persuaded that the megaliths worldwide were erected during the golden age of the gods, approximately 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. In fact, the word that we use to this day to describe the advanced masonry employed in the construction of megaliths is associated with the Cyclopes, who were the children of the gods in Greek and Roman lore. Cyclopean masonry is the trademark of megaliths worldwide. One thing we can say about the megaliths with certainty is that their building employed the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. There is a clear association between the megaliths and the cosmos, particularly with the planet Mars. I believe that the fallen angels were attempting to recreate on Earth the pre-Adamic empire that once existed on Mars and elsewhere in the cosmos. And the cataclysm that destroyed their world has been preserved in one form or another by every primary ancient culture on Earth. However, in stark contrast to the Hebrew narrative, the Watchers are often portrayed as Promethean archetypes, benevolent beings that descended from heaven to civilize mankind and to usher in a golden age of prosperity, of peace and knowledge, in which men and gods dwelt together in harmony. And that is the narrative, of course, of the occult. This is certainly the doctrine of the mystery schools, which are the occult priesthoods, going all the way back to Sumer and ancient Egypt, committed to the preservation of arcane knowledge, i.e., the knowledge of the Watchers. Within the mystery schools, the Golden Age is often typified by the mythical lands and cities of Lemuria, Thule, Mul, Hyperborea, Shambhala, and Atlantis, among others. The legend of Atlantis is particularly significant. Not only does it serve as an allegory of the Golden Age, it also happens to precisely correlate with biblical prophecy concerning the end of the age. According to Plato and Manly P. Hall, the story of Atlantis begins with the gods dividing dominion of the earth amongst themselves. Each of the gods is apportioned a realm in which a temple is erected to his veneration and sacrifices are instituted for his appeasement. Poseidon receives for his lot the island of Atlantis. He becomes enamored with the human woman and takes her to wife. The woman gives birth to 5 pairs of hybrid sons, 10 in all, who become the kings of Poseidon's Atlantean empire. The dominion of the empire is divided between the 10 hybrid kings who are bound together in a league and rule over 7 islands. 10 kings bound together in a league, ruling over 7 domains, is prophesied in the book of Revelation concerning the end of the age. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. The 10 horns of the dragon are 10 kings, and the 7 heads crowned with 7 diadems are the 7 domains over which they rule, which I believe to signify world dominion, 7 being the number of completeness in the scriptures. This red dragon, identified in Revelation 20 as the devil, gives his authority to a beast that rises up out of the sea. And I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. The beast is symbolic of an earthly kingdom with 10 kings that directly reflect the dragon and his kingdom. The 10 kings of the earthly kingdom are imbued with the authority of the 10 kings of the dragon's kingdom. Notice that this beast rises up out of the sea. Atlantis symbolic of the Watcher's kingdom, sink into the depths of the sea. It is my opinion that the beast rising up out of the sea is a prophetic allusion to the re-emergence of the empire of the gods that was inundated in the waters of the great flood over 5,000 years ago. Furthermore, I suspect that like the 10 sons of Poseidon, the 10 kings of the earthly kingdom received their power and authority from their fathers, who are fallen angels and rulers in Satan's kingdom. In other words, it's Genesis 6 2.0. This suspicion of mine appears to be validated in the 2nd chapter of Daniel, where King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream of a great statue, the head of which was made of gold, the chest and arms of silver, the midsection of bronze, and the legs of iron. And the feet were made of iron mixed with clay. The statue's compartmentalized sections, cast in distinctive metals, represent 5 empires that would arise before the end of the age. Now, Daniel informs Nebuchadnezzar that the first empire identified in the statue, the head of gold, was his own dominion, the kingdom of Babylon, and that the other 4 would precede him. With history in hindsight, we can verify the astounding accuracy of Daniel's prophecy regarding Nebuchadnezzar's statue. The chest and arms of silver were the successive kingdoms of the Medes and Persians. The midsection of bronze was the empire of the Greeks. The legs of iron were representative of the Roman Empire, which, just as the statue depicted, would ultimately be divided into 2 kingdoms, the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire. The final empire, represented in the statue, is depicted in the feet with 10 toes, which are cast in iron mixed with miry clay. This is the empire of the dragon and the beast from Revelation. As is the case in most biblical prophecies, there are multiple dimensions of interpretation built into the symbology. The metaphor of iron mixed with clay in the feet and toes of Nebuchadnezzar's statue is twofold. First, it represents a fractured kingdom. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. But the metaphor of iron mixed with clay does not stop there. It continues. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Whoever they are, it's apparent that they are not men, but are mingling their seed with the seed of men. Now we know that this passage is referring to the beast's 10 kings because the following verse informs us. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. These are no ordinary kings. These are hybrid kings, the sons of the gods. And their leader, who is separate from the 10, embodied in the beast itself, the man we call the Antichrist, is very likely the hybrid son of the dragon. Look at the first thing the dragon does when he appears in John's Revelation. Behold, the great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. This is the devil's last move, the final execution of a strategy that began with the Watchers in the days of Jared. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren who accused them before our God day and night has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows that his time is short." Notice that after the dragon and his angels are cast to the earth, the saints overcome him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and by virtue of the fact that they do not love their lives to the death. I have a feeling that not loving their lives to the death carries a dual meaning. First, that they do not deny Christ in the face of severe persecution and death, certainly, without question. But second, that they do not love their lives to the degree that they are willing to receive the biotechnological upgrades that would extend and preserve them. You see, I believe that not just the 10 kings, but the subjects of their kingdoms are going to be hybridized. I began this presentation by highlighting the impending crisis of genetic degeneration and mutational meltdown that is looming on the horizon for the human species. It is no coincidence that a host of technological breakthroughs relating to genetics, robotics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology have arrived just in time to offer mankind the tools to forestall his inevitable fate. But not only has the technology miraculously arrived in the hour of our crisis, the theology is also in place. It is a theology of transhumanism. It is the gospel of Jesus Christ without the cross. The rectification of the human condition without the resurrection. It is Luciferianism, the promise of apotheosis, whispered once again from the tree of knowledge, "You shall be like the gods."
In the post-human era, we become Homo superior. We become a new species. We're talking about humanity becoming like the gods. What do you think?
At first, biotechnological upgrades will offer us the possibility of healthier, longer lives without altering our humanity. But as we progress further into the future, the crisis of genetic degeneration will force mankind to make a choice. Do we accept the atrophy of Adam and go quietly into the night as men? Or do we shed Adam and live forever as gods? You see, the only way that humanity can truly avert the mortal decay inherent in the human condition is to become something other than human. I believe that the transhumanist doctrine and the technologies that facilitate it are designed to acclimate the human race in anticipation of the event that will catalyze the full-scale hybridization of mankind, the return of the gods, and the resurgence of the Golden Age. They will appear in the hour of our need as the saviors of our race and will offer mankind the apple of apotheosis to become like them. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, and by doing so, will rescue humanity from the apocalypse of mutational meltdown. In Matthew 24 and Mark 13, Jesus is discussing the end of the age with his disciples. He tells them, "There will be great tribulation such as has not been, so nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened." This is why genetic modification is so dangerous, is because the modified genes can be made to be inheritable by successive generations. I believe that the reason why the days are shortened at the end of the age is because if they were not, there would be no candidates left for salvation on the earth. No flesh would be able to be saved. All flesh would be corrupted. But thank God he shortens the day to preserve the elect. The work of Freemasonry was to restore the Golden Age and build a new Atlantis, who was descended of a divine race. That is, he belonged to the order of the Illumined. During the 19th and 20th centuries, as occultism was surging across the world, the New Age movement was predicated on this very expectation. Founder of the Lucis Trust, an occult organization, worked for the Brotherhood of Masters, who she referred to as the hierarchy. The hierarchy are ascended beings residing on the earth, or rather under the earth, who have been tasked with guiding humanity towards the realization of the great plan. God himself walked among men, and the members of the spiritual hierarchy were openly guiding and directing the affairs of humanity as man's innate freedom permitted. Now, in the immediate future, this will happen again. The masters will walk openly among men, that the ancient mysteries will be restored and the ancient landmarks will again be recognized.
Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land. By the way, you see that white, all those white blemishes? That's salt. This was under the ocean and under the nano.
The problem is there's these concentric circles.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything. I mean, obviously I'm not an archaeologist, but I've never seen anything like this